UDC.
Our presentation is about Ameren's journey from going from the Web AppBuilder to the Experience Builder. So my name is Don Vanker. I am an account manager at UDC. I've been there 9 years now, and I've been in the industry for about 36 years now. I started off in data, did 30 years of that, and then decided stuff was moving too fast for an old man. So I'll get into the part where I know, and that's talking with people. I'm also here with Mark Nordheim from Ameren, and he is the senior software engineer at Ameren, and he is the one we work with very closely to take their existing applications in the Web AppBuilder and put them into the Experience Builder for him so he could utilize the functionality of the UN. So here's a little bit about Ameren. They cover most of Illinois, the southern part of Illinois, and probably about 30% of Missouri, somewhere around there. Yeah. There are 2.4 million electric customers and 900,000 gas customers on the distribution side. And on the electric side, they have about 7,500 miles of circuit transmission. The point of this whole project was when we started their journey on the UN to get them to the utility network, we noticed through publications that Ameren was going to have to probably make a decision on whether they wanted to keep the Web AppBuilder or, a little updated technology. And we had heard rumblings, and this was about 1.5 years ago when we were doing this. We heard that, Java 3X was probably going to be deprecated at a certain point. So we sat down as a company and said, do we go to Ameren and say, stay on Web App for as long as you can because you know about the functionality on it, or do we, ask them to pay a little bit more now to get them into the Experience Builder, knowing that it's future-proofed and that they can build many more, I want to say cool apps, but I don't know if that's a cool word anymore. Just so they could use the functionality that the UN brings and at such an inherent level and things that they can't do before and that they really wanted to do. So we talked with Ameren, and they agreed that they probably should move. So that kind of set off this wheel in motion of let's take everything and move it into an Experience Builder. And with this, I'll turn it over to Mark and let him go through what the project actually entailed.
All right, thank you, Don.
Yep.
Okay, so the first thing that we had to do, like Don said, was decide whether to upgrade. Now, we had the overall project was to move our data to the UN, and we actually did present on the overall project at UC last year, and we went live with the project a little over a month after that, and at the end of August of last year. But going back to that time, one of the big decisions we had to make was what to do with our existing web apps, because we had a bunch of them. And we're focusing here mostly on kind of our biggest web app, the Transmission GIS Web Viewer, which had maps of our entire transmission system, our construction projects, and a whole bunch of other information that people wanted to see with that. So we knew we would have to upgrade that app anyway, regardless, because pointing to the UN as a data source was going to change things. But so the question was, at the same time, do we also want to go to Experience Builder? And the fact that Web AppBuilder is going to be retired and the future support would be in Experience Builder was a big push for us, that it would be easier to do that upgrade at the same time instead of having to go back and change it again a little later. So that was probably the biggest reason we went with Experience Builder. Now, I do want, before I forget, to point out one thing that tripped us up about this, and that was, so the big difference between them, of course, is that Web AppBuilder is built on Esri's JavaScript 3x API, and Experience Builder was built on the 4x API. One thing that was an issue for us was that the 4x API uses WebFG under the hood to display things, and WebFG requires a machine to have a video card to work at a reasonable speed. We have users at Ameren that connect to our viewers and our maps using virtual machines. And the virtual machines at Ameren do not have video cards. We were told by our IT department that a virtual machine with a video card is actually quite a bit more expensive than one with just a regular CPU. And these virtual machines could not display our web apps that were made in Experience Builder. So if connecting to your web apps via virtual machine is a major part of your enterprise, then you will need to come up with a workaround for that before you move your apps to anything using the 4X API, such as Experience Builder. So that's just something I wanted to point out. There are a lot of advantages of Experience Builder, which is why we decided to go with it. Support, because our overall project was a utility network project, support for utility network was a big part of, was one of the main reasons why Experience Builder was an advantage for us, because Esri was building tools for tracing the utility network and reading the utility network into Experience Builder that were probably never going to make it to the older Web App Builder. Yeah, anyway, so the workaround that we used for that issue was just to maintain a slim version of the app that was built in Web App Builder, and to push our IT department to upgrade our infrastructure so that we could get virtual machines with video cards for our users that use virtual machines. So again, here's a variety of advantages to Experience Builder that I'm not going to read to you, but you can read yourself now that this slide is actually up. All right, so once we decided to go to Experience Builder, there was another decision to make. Anyone that's looked into this knows that there are more than one, there's more than one edition of Experience Builder that you can choose from. There's obviously there's a version on ArcGIS Online, but which was not in the conversation for us because our data is hosted locally on premise on our enterprise server for the utility network. So then the choice was, do we use like the enterprise or portal edition of Experience Builder, or do we use the developer edition? So if you don't know what the difference is, the portal edition works a lot like it does in our ArcGIS Online, where you just do it straight from the web app, whereas the developer edition is a standalone app, and then the apps that it generates in turn are not portal items on your portal. They're something that you kind of have to copy onto a web server. So back in our days of using Web App Builder, we used the developer edition of that because the edition that was available on the portal did not have all the functionality we wanted. We were happy to find out that in Experience Builder, the portal version of it actually did have all the functionality we wanted. Now, there was one reason we didn't, that we still talked about what decision to make on this before just going with the portal edition, and that you see this bullet point on the left where we say updates are more streamlined. What we mean by that is that Esri is constantly adding new features to Experience Builder. They're developing it quite quickly. It is still not quite at parity with Web App Builder in terms of having all the features that Web App Builder used to have. And we thought that if we went with the developer edition, we could, whenever Esri released an update, we could just have that. We could just get the new Experience Builder developer edition, and we'd have the new functionality available. Whereas with the portal edition, the problem would be that if we wanted new functionality that Esri added to Experience Builder, the easiest way to upgrade it would be upgrading Enterprise itself on all our servers, because it's so built in and connected. But we decided that the benefits of Portal Edition outweighed that concern. And the main reason is how much easier it is to update these apps when they are just portal items that you can go in, click an app, and say, I'm going to update this. I'm going to make this change. It goes right onto the portal, right into the app. Like, it is so much easier than the developer edition, where you have to like copy files around on a web server and run this separate app for the Experience Builder and things like that. So we decided to go with the Portal Edition, and we were happy with that. So,
Wait at the screen when you do it.
okay.
You're good.
All right, so again, Ameren and UDC were working together on this. UDC did an investigation for us on all the widgets that we had in our Web AppBuilder version of our app to determine how many of them were available off the shelf in Experience Builder, and the answer they came up with was 80% of them we would be able to port over to Experience Builder with no additional coding. So there were that's 17 out of the 21. That there was 4 widgets that were not available out of the box in Experience Builder. That 3 of them were widgets that had involved custom code in the Web AppBuilder version, and the custom code in JavaScript API just would have to be ported over to our Experience Builder app and refigured for the 4x JavaScript API. The last one was that we had something that used the geoprocessing widget in Web AppBuilder, which is one of the roadmap items that has not made it into Experience Builder yet. I believe as of this time, it is still not available in the newest version of Experience Builder, though that may have changed because it's been on the roadmap for a while. But last I checked, it wasn't. So we ended up having to just drop our widget that used the Web AppBuilder's geoprocessing widget and going over to this. So here's what the app looked like in Web AppBuilder. I mean, obviously you're not seeing all the layers here, but you're seeing our core transmission data and the underlying maps of our system. And here's what it looked like when we made it in Experience Builder. And so it's not exact, it's not identical, but it was similar enough that it was a pretty seamless transition for our users to go from one app to another, and it looked like they were still doing the same thing. So we were happy that UDC was able to replicate our app pretty well. I mean, there's a lot of small differences between what you can do with Web AppBuilder and Experience Builder, but all the functionality is there, with the exception of that one widget that I mentioned before. So one of the new things we had, the main underlying difference under the hood, besides the Experience Builder technology, is that the underlying data is now our utility network instead of our old database, which was not even networked. I think a lot of transmission users can relate to this, that they didn't even use geometric network. So we had gone straight from just points and lines that were not networked to utility network. And so now we had this search tool that looks for where you can select a line and then a structure number, and it will find the line and structure. And that had to be refigured to look at the utility network. I would just say that this slide with the search results, where it brought up the structure we searched for in a pop-up, it showcases a couple of the other custom coding, some of the other custom coding that UDC helped us with on this app, and that is the pop-up being in a side panel was custom coded. That is not how they come up by default. And then also this table here, with the pole height, with the heights and classes of the 3 poles that make up this transmission structure. those are not attributes of the structure. Those are attributes of a pole, of a wood pole, which is, of course, in the utility network, that's a structured junction object, and the structure itself is a structured junction. So what we are actually doing is having our app read that structural attachment relationship from the utility network to display the heights and classes of all the poles related to a particular structure. So it is neat that Experience Builder allows us to follow all these relationships within the utility network to get what we need into our pop-ups and things like that. And also our search functionality is also querying relationships in the utility network to find structures associated with different line names and things like that. Of course, the other thing you can do with utility network that everybody knows about is tracing. And we were, as a result of this project, the Experience Builder does have a UN trace widget, and we were able to add that to our map viewer, or our web app for the first time. And you can see that it's a pretty basic trace. We just grabbed an entire subnetwork, and it showed that it returned a bunch of features so we can see what's on the subnetwork. Now, we have this little pin in the corner here. It says execution of this requires a UN user license. And this was a problem for us because we didn't have as many UN user licenses as we had users. So we have some users right now that can't use this utility network trace as a result of that. Now, the good news about this is that starting in, I think, 11.2 or 11.3, this no longer requires a separate license. It's just included in the same license as you'll have for enterprise already if you're doing utility network. But at 11.1, which is where we are, we do need to assign a utility network license to users in order for them to do this trace in our web app. So let's take a look at some of the more interesting custom-coded JavaScript apps that UDC helped us port over from our old JavaScript 3x API to the JavaScript 4x so we could use it in Experience Builder. There was 4 different pretty detailed custom-coded JavaScript apps that we had. The first one is our Lightning search, or Lightning query. So this is for finding where lightning strikes near lines are, and to analyze faults and things like that. Our system protection group makes heavy use of this Lightning tool. And then our operations team needs to know where lightning is as well during storms to look for potential outages and things like that. So this tool actually queries the Vicella Lightning database and brings them into our map. And so that's something we did with the JavaScript API, and part of this project was, again, to bring it into the 4x JavaScript API so that we could have it in our new app. The next one, there's actually two of them here on this view, is our weather radar widget. Certainly there are off-the-shelf weather layers that you can add to a map, but our operations team had fairly specific requirements for how they wanted it to auto-update. They wanted it to both have like the animated radar where you would see like the last several frames moving, and to have it automatically download new data every so often so that you didn't have to click buttons to refresh it, because it needed to be up on a screen all the time in our transmission operations center. And so we couldn't find one off the shelf that did both of those things. So we had UDC help us port over, again, the custom widget that did that. So the other thing on here is the 10-minute Lightning widget, which is, it queries the same Lightning database as our other one, but instead of choosing a time in a pop-up to search for lightning or a time range, instead it just displays all lightning within the last 10 minutes so that it can, again, can be up in the operations center and they can see recent lightning strikes. So then the last one that we had was our planned outage widget. And that is, planned outages are normally managed at Ameren using a application we call Switching Manager, which is just basically table-based, so it doesn't have a map in it. And seeing planned outages on a map is important for our team when they're deciding when they can do, like for when planning when when additional outages can be taken for additional projects and things like that. So this is very important to our operations and planning and project management teams to be able to see our planned outages on a map. And so that is an overview of what we did as part of our overall utility network migration for upgrading from our web apps from Web AppBuilder to Experience Builder. We have completed phase 1 of our project, which was basically moving all of our existing transmission GIS infrastructure over to utility network and the latest Esri technology, which includes Experience Builder. Phase 2 of our project should be starting. We should be starting at least with some basic analysis by the end of this year, I think, although I don't know when we're going to get into the bulk of the project, and that is adding things to our utility network model that were not in our old model, which is mostly components inside the substation. So that'll be exciting for us because utility network is going to make it a lot easier to add those things than it would have been if we had to come up with our own schema for them and things like that. And those will all also be added to our Experience Builder as well. Now, the other parts of Ameren are just starting now on their utility network journey, and they're going to be doing some of the same things that we did in Ameren Transmission. So the electric distribution and gas sides of the business are behind us in terms of adapting these technologies, but they are just starting that project now. So we were kind of the pilot for Ameren, and we're excited to continue moving forward with this. And we're very grateful to UDC for helping us with this project. We couldn't have done it nearly as successfully without them. So thank you, Don, and the rest of the UDC folks. A lot of the people that were on this team are here in the audience, and I appreciate them showing up. So thank you, and we will take your questions.
UDC